Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Sorry for the slight delay in starting. We had a couple of technical issues. We had to restart the entire webinar, but we live and learn, and we're moving on. So welcome. Thank you for hanging around. We know it's going to be worthwhile. As many of you know, I'm Laura Barker. I'm the MD of Black Bark Productions and founder of the GradStar program. As I said, thank you for joining us here today. This is the Build Your Personal Brand webinar hosted by BAT. Over the past 5 years, GradStar has recognised and assisted with the employment of thousands of students, just like yourselves. And we're here today with one of our top employers who's given us so much support to provide this forum for you to take the opportunity to ask and learn about your futures. As many of you will be aware, BAT is an important partner, sponsoring both the GradStar and the Rising Star programs, therefore truly demonstrating their commitment to young talent and future leaders. And they're also a major employer of all you GradStar students out there. So the way the world is now isn't quite what we thought it would be even a year ago. We thought everything would come right by now, and it hasn't quite. And we know that you guys as students have had a particularly rough year. With uncertain academic years, uncertain graduations, virtual ceremonies, all that hard work, all that uncertainty, change. Well, we're here today to tell you that you've got this. We believe in you, and also please remember the employers are still here and they are waiting for you. Today, BAT have lined up some of their top talent and some of their senior leaders to share with you the benefits of building a personal brand. And who better to start with than Neo? She's a senior brand manager at BAT. She has over 15 years experience across both research and brand management. An expert in brand, and she's here to help you. She will be supported by Livash, an aeronautical engineer by qualification and head of manufacturing at BAT in his day job. And he has vast experience across functions ranging from marketing to operations, and he has a wealth of knowledge, and he's also here to share his knowledge with you today. And finally, we have Wendilene. She's a Bachelor of Science graduate, as I'm sure many of you out there one day will be, and she's the current senior HRBP for operations at BAT. Call on her. She knows what makes a great employee. And for those of you that know our Rising Star program, both Wendilene and Neo have both entered in previous years, and they've both made the top 5. What an incredible lineup. So these discussions today will be facilitated by the amazing Arturo Watlington. He's the HRBP at BAT, and I'll hand over to him shortly. But just remember, before I do, these amazing leaders are here to share their knowledge with you and to help you build your future. So ask them, take this moment, fill the chat with questions, and I will come back on after the discussion and pose as many of the questions as I can. Be noticed. All the HR representatives are here today looking to be impressed. So this is your moment. Talk, ask, share. We will be sharing the chat log with BAT, and they will choose themselves who they want to hear more from. So make sure you're the one that stands out, shows up, and is noticed today. And don't forget, one lucky participant will win time with senior leadership at BAT, and that is not an opportunity that comes along every day. So please feel free to post about your experiences and your learnings on our social media after the event. You will see everything you need to know, all our handles, and BAT on the slide right here. So that's me. You're not here to hear me. You're not here to see me. I'm done. I'm looking forward to learning too. Arturo, I'm going to hand over to you now. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura, for that wonderful introduction. So welcome, everybody, and thank you for hosting us today. We're really super excited about this webinar today. And as you may know, that we'll have a series of webinars running throughout the year. So please be sure to join in the webinars for the rest of the year that we'll be hosting as BAT. So today we've got a couple of things that we'd like to share with you before we kind of get into the main event of today, which is really around building your personal brand. So I'll give you a bit of a background around who we are as BAT. I'd like to share some programs that we have and that we'd encourage you to join as well. And then we'll dive into the panel discussion with our 3 amazing panelists. And then, like Laura has mentioned, continue to be engaging. We'll have the Q&A thereafter, and one of you may be lucky enough to win the amazing prize of having a one-on-one session with one of our senior leaders. All right. So just an overview of BAT and who we are. We are a leading multi-category consumer goods business with a presence in over 200 markets globally. Our purpose really is to build a better tomorrow. And this is, at the forefront of everything that we do. And, the way we do our jobs every day and how we show up at work every day really speaks to how do we build a better tomorrow. So BAT South Africa forms part of a region called East and Southern Africa. And we employ more than 1,100 employees directly, and we are proud to be certified as a South African top employer company. So in the video that I'll play or that we'll share after this, as I mentioned earlier, how we build a better tomorrow is really through our people. And we encourage behaviors such as being bold, being fast, empowering our people, and being responsible and diverse. And we believe through this is how we will achieve our strategy as BAT. And once again, as a top employer and employer of choice, this helps us stand out in an increasingly competitive international market. So without any further ado, if we could play the video, please.
BAT has strong foundations, and we're deploying our outstanding capabilities to meet the changing needs of consumers. For decades, cigarettes satisfied sensorial needs. Today, occasions for tobacco consumption are reduced, and with more smokers looking for alternatives, we see new opportunities to satisfy consumer preferences with a focused portfolio of new category products. And in the future, with products beyond nicotine. We'll ensure our new categories portfolio operates within key boundaries that reflect our core strengths, leveraging our current inhalation and oral platforms, our global marketing reach, our science and regulatory expertise, and our strategic and financial imperatives, while simultaneously reducing the health impact of our business and making a positive contribution to the environment. To capture the new growth opportunities, we've evolved our strategy, and we now have a very clear purpose: to build a better tomorrow by reducing the health impact of our business through offering a greater choice of enjoyable and less risky products for our consumers. To deliver this purpose, we have our mission: to stimulate the senses of new adult generations. And to win, we'll be targeting high-growth segments and priority markets, and deploying inspirational foresights, remarkable innovation, powerful brands, our connected organisation, our talented people and partnerships, and a focus on the US. In doing this, we'll create a better tomorrow for all our stakeholders: consumers, society, employees and shareholders. Key to achieving our purpose is our ethos. It's an evolution of our guiding principles and represents our culture, who we are as a business. At the same time, we're moving from a business where sustainability has always been important to one where it's front and centre in all we do. Reducing the health impact of our business with our targets of 50 million consumers of non-combustible products by 2030, and managing our impact on the environment by becoming carbon neutral by 2030, and behaving ethically in all we do. We're on a journey to define ourselves not by the products we sell, but by the consumer needs we meet. BAT, building a better tomorrow.
Awesome, thank you. So, you would have noticed after the video, it really speaks to who we are as BAT and our ethos and how our people show up at work every day. So one of the programs that we'd like to share with you and really encourage you to join is our global graduate program. This is a 12-month accelerated development program, which is geared towards students like yourselves. And really what it is about, it is a real job from day one. You will have full ownership and full accountability for your delivery from day one. You'll have international learning experience, and you'll get to connect with graduates across the world within BAT, which we term BAT Academy. You'll have dedicated mentorship and coaching as well throughout your journey. And once you've completed the 1-year journey, you will graduate into a management role within BAT. So I would encourage you to follow our LinkedIn page. It's BAT East and Southern Africa. For more details, we will share when applications will be opened. So please ensure that you apply and really be a part of the BAT family. All right, so that's the first one. If we can move on to the next program. So we've got an amazing initiative called Battle of the Minds that has currently gone live and that is still open. And basically, Battle of the Minds is a BAT global business competition, and it's really focused on uncovering and discovering, the great young minds across the globe. And this installment of the competition promises to be much better than anything else. Battle of the Minds is being run for the 3rd time, so this is a major event on the BAT calendar globally, and it allows us to find and nurture some of the brightest young business minds from around the world. But I don't think I can do any justice to explain this, so I think let me show you a little video that will really unpack what Battle of the Minds is all about. All right, so please visit the URL and check out our LinkedIn page as well for some details on Battle of the Minds. And there's some amazing initiatives that have come through over the past years. And really in the spirit of building a better tomorrow, the content around this and the ideas, the submissions that we've received thus far is totally amazing. So I think this is your opportunity to share your great ideas of how we can make the world a better place and really sustaining the resources within our world. So you've seen there's some great prizes. There's £50,000 up for grabs in order to bring your idea to life. So make sure that you submit your ideas before the closing date. So please follow us on our LinkedIn page so you can get more details around that. All right. So I think without any further ado, we will go into the main event of today, which is really our panel discussion. And before we head on into that, I'd like to introduce our panelists. If you could just turn your cameras on for our panelists as well. So we've got Wendilene, Livash, and Neo with us today. So thank you guys. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come and share your insights with us as senior leaders in our business. I really hope that this will be a very good session. And students, I really hope that you will engage, share your questions, ask your questions, because now's your chance to really get some great insights from these amazing leaders. All right. So I think before we kind of kick off into some of the difficult questions, I think we've been seeing this term being thrown around, personal branding, and do we fully understand it? So I think the first question is, and I will pose this to yourself, Livash, is what is a personal brand and why is it so important within the context of work?
Thank you, Arturo. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Perfect. So for me, firstly, thank you. It's actually a privilege for me to engage with all of our students and to be part of the panel. A personal brand for me, it's a set of principles that will define you as a leader as you progress through your career. For me, it's something that's generally embedded within your core, and it's a way that people see you and the way that you present yourself. It's something that I also use to distinguish myself in the business environment as a leader and as a professional. and also distinguish myself within a crowd. You know, I'm sure the students feel a sense of pressure, the number of students around them, you know, going for the same positions. Your personal brand will be something that really stands out from the crowd, resonates with others, and really sets you amongst your peers. It also, for me, is something that enables you to connect with others beyond perceived barriers. We're a very diverse country, very diverse nation, and we need to extend ourselves beyond, you know, barriers that we may see in South Africa today. And I feel your personal brand is something that will extend you beyond those barriers to connect with others.
Thanks for that, Livash. Now, do you have any thoughts on this as a brand manager? I think this is something that I'm sure you can give us some insights on.
Yeah, I think, hi everyone, I'm really excited to be on this call also today in terms of our future leaders. I was actually in a conversation with some of our new global graduates who have just come through from a sales rotation, and I was having a check-in with them yesterday. And I think this question of what does personal brand mean, you know, I'm a little bit left sometimes in terms of definition, but I think everything Livash has said is valid. I think the build from my side, not only as a brand manager, I just think in terms of how I navigate kind of my career, but also my normal life. It's really kind of, it's a heightened self-awareness of who you are. You know, you first define, you know, in terms of kind of like what your value systems are, what are your anchors, and you start honing in on that. And that will naturally, through time and through obviously sometimes of periods of discomfort, it will translate to other people, you know. I think how you're perceived really starts with how yourself, you know, in that way. We talk about purpose within the business also. It's also understanding kind of your self in terms of what your ambitions are, what you strive for, what kind of legacy you want to leave. You start going up, as Livash mentioned, just kind of like this management journey where you're responsible for people also in terms of the things that you will instill and how you actually kind of navigate not only within the corporate environment, but also within your personal capacity. Yeah, so I think that personal brand is, you know, for me, it starts within and understanding that, but then it's how you reflect it and how you start navigating through not only the corporate environment, but even within kind of like your younger tertiary life. And as you start going into kind of your first entry-level positions. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Nayo, and thanks, Livash, for your insights on that. So I think kind of leading into the next question, I think Nayo, you had chatted about this now, and you had mentioned it that you had a conversation with some of the graduates in our business, and I think very often when we have discussions with senior leaders, it's the question that always comes up is, so how did you do it? You know, what made it happen for you? And I think this is really, I think, a burning question for most students and graduates. So I would like to get, all three of you to kind of give your input here and maybe share a bit about your personal journey of how you built your personal brand and how that has kind of translated and helped you along your journey in your career. So yeah, maybe we can start with Wendilene first, and then we can go over to Nayo and Livash.
Hi, everybody. Really a privilege to be here and engage with you. So for me, my personal brand and how I started is a little bit of my background. I basically, as you know, I grew up in South Africa, but I went abroad. I studied in the US. And I think the key thing for me was, and I had the saying, the world is my oyster, right? And the sky is the limit. So that was basically for me that motivated and pushed me to basically achieve what I want to achieve. And for me, it was, I had a goal in mind, right? But it's around how am I going to achieve that goal? And that goal was around, getting a degree and, studying in the States. And also after that, I wanted to basically also ensure that I have a job once I graduated. But I needed to do something that separated and distinguished me from other students like yourselves. We're all vying for the same opportunities and roles. And the key things that I did was that I ensured that I put myself out there, completely out of comfort zone, being in a different country, making sure that, they recognize me. And as you know, when you are in a different country, you need sponsorships, right? You heavily rely on sponsorships to help pay with studies, to help pay with, visas, etc., etc. And what I did was I put myself out there. I joined lots of associations. I became, joined different boards, etc. And that is also that created an opportunity for me to basically get in touch with organizations like you are now getting in touch with BAT managers. And that pretty much created a door for me then to basically get an internship, and also started my first job at an accounting firm in the US. So I think the key thing for me that worked was around putting myself out there, making sure that I'm clear about what it is that I want, and making sure that, managers of companies, that they actually see me, they notice me. Through a crowd of people, I should be able to stand out, right? And that for me was, how do I make myself stand out? And that's pretty much the way I did it.
Wow, okay. Thanks for that, Wendy. Neo, you want to share your story?
Yeah, I mean, I've been with the business for about 9-10 years now. I actually left the business for a little bit, and I always call myself a repeat soldier of coming back to the business. But I think it's also just a testament in terms of how important your personal branding is. Even if sometimes when you leave the organization, and coming back, there were certain questions that I had in terms of I guess what legacy did I leave when I left, and also what I was going to kind of bring back. But I think to Wendy's point also, guys, be intentional in everything that you do. It also just doesn't happen overnight, right? Arturo, I think the question that you had to me earlier, people always ask me, like, I want to be a brand manager like you, and everyone thinks it's just a straight line, to get to this destination. And it hasn't been, kind of thing. My story is dynamic, it's not just only about BAT. I've had a history outside of BAT, but it's kind of always led me to this. And I think when you start building your personal brand, it's through the different networks that you start building, but I think through every sort of experience that you kind of gain from your career when you start out. You don't always start out in exactly, the kind of place that you think that's your end destination, but you take every experience of that. I think networking is important. I think within BAT, one thing that has always been quite important to me in terms of building my personal brand is the transparency I had in terms of, being vulnerable, in terms of also putting myself out there, in terms of what I wanted, but also just my voice in terms of, the kind of roles I was in, and kind of like the opinions that we had in terms of our brands that we work on. Yes, sometimes it's not always the right view, but I think that what that obviously unlocks is conversations where kind of like your senior manager's like, okay, now it's kind of got a interesting viewpoint. It might not be right, but it kind of starts building that trust, right? And so that's how you start navigating with your stakeholders in that way and really building the credibility. But I always say, guys, you got to do the job. You got to put in the time also as well, because I think Wendy says everyone's vying for the same position sometimes, but it's never necessarily a competition with someone else, with yourself, and start understanding what really defines you, and people will eventually see it, kind of thing. Because I always talk about, like, on YouTube, the YouTubers, consistency is key in terms of who you are, not only to your senior stakeholders, but to your peers also as well, because those are the people that also support and elevate you in that way. And I think that's very important to always keep that in top of mind, because authenticity is important. Speaking to a senior person in a certain way and someone else who might be a peer or at a job grade lower than you, that can be a bit of a tension in terms of your personal brand. So remain consistent and remain authentic to yourself. Yeah.
Wow, thanks for that. Now, I think now, just before we go over to Livash, I think there's maybe just a follow-up question, and I think many people, like you say, you would say, I want to be like you, I want to be a senior brand manager, show me the way. But I think I think this naturally, or it comes naturally to kind of people who are considered extroverts. Do you have any piece of advice for how an introvert would manage this? Because myself as an introvert, I wouldn't necessarily go out there looking to network with senior leaders because I'm a bit shy, or something like that. So do you have any thoughts on that, really? How would I manage that if I was an introvert and not a very outgoing person? What piece of advice would you give to someone like that?
Yeah, it's always an interesting question, because I'm also supposedly defined as an extrovert, but I have my introvert tendencies. And Livash is shaking his head. But I think I've learned through, I have quite a dynamic team of different personalities in that way. And I think networking is not just about, being in the elevator and having a conversation with someone, kind of thing. It's kind of honing in on your craft in that way. And I think in my team, I have a mix of introverts, like extreme introverts, and ones who are quite expressive. And there's benefits of both because, and funny enough, yesterday with the global guys, I'm like, guys, there isn't one template, in terms of what is deemed successful within the marketing fraternity. It's just really starting to understand kind of where your strengths lies. And I know it takes a bit of courage to, build up the courage to say something sometimes in a meeting or within an informal conversation, but, it doesn't have to be loud and proud in order to be heard, in that way. So influence comes in many forms. And I think with the AMA 2000s, the new generation of, these guys on this call, it's the world is evolving and we also need to evolve. And I think we are slowly getting there as corporate. And so there isn't one template, in that way. So I can't dictate exactly your approach, but it's trying to figure that out, that it's not about buying someone a coffee and be like, hey. It's not about that. It's quite old school, that kind of networking approach. That's not controversial.
Now, I'd like to build a bit on Neo's point because contrary to popular belief, I am an introvert, a massive introvert. But over my career, I've led thousands of people in factories and many different functions. I think the key is you learn how to flex your style given the job at hand. So sometimes as an introvert, you have a purpose to motivate many, many people. And without your input, probably they would be without guidance. So over time, you need to develop the skill to flex yourself in different environments. So, the one advice I would give is become comfortable with discomfort. So push yourself into new things, learn new things, go into experiences where you don't feel comfortable. You really don't have a handle on your limitations until you really experience something. So even to this day, I'm continuously learning, continuously putting myself in spaces that make me feel very uncomfortable, to the point at which a lot of people think I'm an extrovert, but definitely not.
Thanks for that, Livash. And I think, you've touched on very, very key points there as well. And, I'm sure that is what you've done over your journey as well, across your career. So I think we'll move on to the next question. And I think, Wendilene, this one is more geared towards you, as our senior HR professional in the call. As a student, now I'm hearing about personal branding from people like yourselves. When should I start thinking about building my personal brand, and what are the steps that I need to take in order to kind of get to where I want to be? So if we look at it through an HR lens, what would your advice be to a student? When do they start looking at developing a personal brand, and what are some of the things that we need to be conscious of when doing so?
Yeah, so I think everybody on the call should have already started. If they haven't yet, they should start like as in today, right? Because I think it's very, very important. When we start, and I'll look at it, two parts, right? I'll look at it from a HR perspective. When we, for example, go out in the market and we start recruiting, some of the key things that I look at is to see, yes, you're a student just graduating, right? But what other things have you basically been involved with? What other things have you done? So, and this is why I always encourage people to, have some extracurricular activities that you also, partake in. And this spans from doing internships, making sure, or volunteering, etc., right? Because all of these basically also help build your skills, right? So when we interview, yes, you, for example, might have the degree, etc., but what are also some of the other things, like the softer side of things where you've gotten the exposure, right? That basically help build your character, also give us an idea of, what is your personal brand, what are the things that you're passionate about, right? Because that is some of the things that we look at and also want to encourage, to continue to build on that. And Arturo mentioned previously that, BAT is all about, a better tomorrow, right? So how do you come and bring your difference, right, to the organization, right? Because we're not just, looking at you coming in with a degree, right? But what else do you bring with you, right? Because all of that you can utilize and bring and build and help making, for example, BAT a better tomorrow. And I think the other part of that is also, we are living in a digitalized world, right? And sometimes we don't realize that, employers also look at, okay, what are you doing, outside of, besides for work, right? Because we like, there's Twitter, there's Instagram and Facebook. And you need to be very cognizant also of, how you're marketing yourself on those platforms, right? And I'll give you an example. When I was in the States, right? And I know of somebody that, the person was, successful pretty much on all forums, successful for an internship, right? But the one part that he did not was not cognizant of is the fact that his digital platform, right? And then the employer went and they saw some of the stuff that they post. And that person was ultimately not successful because of the stuff that was posted on that. So I think it's very, very important that, as you build your brand, be cognizant also about what you post from a digital platform perspective, yeah? But definitely, guys, if you have not started building your brand right now, start immediately, right? Because it's very, very important as you go through this journey and as you apply for also getting, yeah?
Wow,
thanks. My comments on what Wendy is speaking about. It's quite important that you start early and identify your passion. There's a saying is when you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. So, commit yourself to learning and feeling and experiencing new things. When you find the value you can add by exploiting your passion, I think you've more or less found it. And that's the one thing you should build on as you go. Not to say that, your personal brand will stay the same throughout your working career or your life. It definitely, in my opinion, would change. But try and make sure it's linked to something you're really passionate about.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for that, Livash. And I think, you were touched on this, Livash, around, your personal brand might not stay the same throughout your career journey. And I think maybe this is a question that you could maybe expand on a bit. As we will grow through our careers as students and as early careers, how can I expect my personal brand to evolve as I go through different roles or different businesses, so to say? What would your take be on this, around how would my personal brand evolve? Why would it need to evolve, etc.?
Yeah, for me, there's two things. Firstly, I think every person is different. So some are consistent. Some people will change their brand over a period of time. And I also feel that we're professionals that have been conditioned with certain experiences in life. So depending on those experiences, you could end up with a personal brand that's really deep and entrenched in who you are, or you could end up in a place where, it is time to reconsider given, something that's happened in your life or where your career is headed. So I don't think there's a right and wrong answer, whether it should stay consistent or whether it should change. I think the most critical time, and I think Wendy said it as well, is, as a student, this is the time where I think the pressure to deliver business results in whichever industry the team end up in, it wouldn't be that significant. So, just deploy yourself into as many opportunities as possible. Neo mentioned it is about standing out from the crowd, putting in the hard yards and really going the extra mile to get more and more experiences under your belt, so you can really determine, what does your personal brand look like.
Thanks for that, Livash. So I think, there's quite a bit of questions coming through, and I think in the interest of time, I think we can kind of go into the Q&A as well. But there was really one question that had stood out for me that I think I really want to ask is, when kind of wanting to stand out, and we've mentioned this, personal brand is really about how do I stand out in a crowd. So the question here is really, by trying to stand out, how do you avoid overdoing it, so to say?
Let me start. It's a good question. Let me start. Like for me, the do's and don'ts. The first thing is don't try too hard. Like I say, everybody's career probably in the early 20s, your career is going to span 40, 50 years. So, you shouldn't be comparing yourself with others. As long as you're committed to the cause, you're doing your absolute best. you're giving it your all. That's all that matters. Neo mentioned it earlier, is you're not in competition with other people. You're in competition with yourself. Your only responsibility is to be a better person today than you were yesterday. In a 40 to 50 year career, what the next guy is doing on social media or which meetings he's attending is really a drop in the ocean for me. So I always say, don't try too hard. Trust the process. It's going to be a journey, and find the things that you love.
And I think I'll add just one part on that one as well. I think it's very, very important that you need to be true to yourself, right? Be authentic. Because if you try to pretend to be somebody else, that really comes through, and we can definitely pick that up, right? So whatever you do, in whatever situations you are about your brand, just make sure that you're authentic about who you are, right? And stick to that, because you can't fake being you, right? But if you fake being somebody else, somebody can pick that up, yeah? So yeah, just be you.
Awesome, thanks for that.
And guys, it's not about standing out, it's not about self-promotion, right? It's your story that you're selling and your experience. And generally that's also through action, yeah? And I think to Livash's point, trust the process. And sometimes you'll wait for that recognition because, you put in the work and it hasn't come, but it might not be your time. So this is where I get a bit like fluffy in terms of like, the universe has got its plan, in that way. And it's sometimes if you don't feel like you're recognized for standing out and putting all this work in the beginning, there's a longer term plan for that, in that kind of respect. So trust the process. It's not a self-promotion. I think action is important more than the mouth most of the time, because you can get called out very easily. Inauthenticity in any sort of environment. That could be your derailer.
Yeah, thanks for that, Neo. I think there's another question that I think is really pertinent, and I think Neo, you had touched on this earlier. When you were sharing that you were a bit left, but I think it's really around when looking at our personal brand, it needs to kind of resonate with what is inside of you. So the question here is really around, okay, in an ideal space, it would be that your personal brand and that alignment is kind of aligned to the organization you're in, whether it be with their culture or their values or their brand itself. How do we deal with the discomfort that comes about when your value, so to say, and what makes up your personal brand does not align with what the organization's kind of values are or kind of brand is? How would you resonate with something, or how would you deal with that level of discomfort?
I think you have to have honest conversations, not only with yourself. Sometimes I think integrity is key. I'm very principled on that. Sometimes, yes, people, the kind of organization or the industry and it's quite controversial. Value system in terms of my purpose, of why I'm here, what I'm here to do, from not only from a business perspective, from a people perspective, is the things that are always remain true, So I think the only action I would say is that, yes, there's consistency in terms of your value systems, but it's important to have honest conversations, because if you start compromising on your own kind of integrity and value system, it's going to impact on you navigating it, I think what is also important is that safe spaces are important. And that's why I talk about, the relationships and the networks that you build, not only with your senior stakeholders or with your peer group. Those are kind of platforms or spaces where you can maybe share and get a different perspective, right? Because sometimes there's a lot that also happens in your head, right? And you create stories, right? But having perspective is also important. I think you mentioned upfront when we were talking about just BAT, we have quite Wendy, you can thank me on this, but we have quite a robust, kind of coaching and talent development framework within BAT. And it's kind of using those outlets also as well in terms of from a mentorship or coaching perspective, or from your line manager, from your peer in that way, just to kind of navigate, because you are going to be faced with challenges all the time. And so even within like kind of the outside workspace, like how do you navigate that? Who do you kind of confide in when you're going through something tough in that way? So I guess it's maybe the message is using the same principles within the kind of corporate organization to kind of then figure out what's the best steps for you based on that thing that might be a bit of a tension point. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. Now, Livash, Wendy, you got any thoughts on this one?
Yeah. For me, we were talking about what happens if your personal brand doesn't align with the organization's brand. There's one thing I'm sure of, that 100% of our customers, consumers, and colleagues are people. So I think a brand of a company, I don't know how true it would be to say it has a brand that's different from mine. It just depends on the people that you interact with. I have, I live by, a few principles to say, if I'm in a situation that I don't like, I commit myself to changing that situation myself. So, only when I've failed, then probably I would part ways with whatever I'm committed to, but I don't think it's happened so far. So I think when you commit yourself to making that change, it will happen.
Perfect. So I think we'll just, in the interest of time, there's also kind of, there's a lot of questions coming through, guys. I'm just trying to sift through it. But I think there is, I'm just going to do 2 more questions, and then we can close up there. So there is a question, and I think this one is more geared towards Wendilene and Neo. So the question here is, as a woman in management and in leadership, especially when it comes to your brand and also kind of within the corporate environment, how do you deal with that? Because we all understand sometimes there are certain pressures that come with that. So the question really is how do you face the challenges that is often associated with being a woman in leadership, number one? And then secondly, how do you face them, especially when you're trying to kind of portray this brand of kind of being a very strong leader as well?
Oh, I like that question a lot. So, as Arturo mentioned, I'm in the operations space, right? So Livash and I work very closely together. And when you look in the ops space, for example, there's the majority of the leadership are men, right? So I think we're about 2 females within that group. You see, at the end of the day, right, I think you get to a point where when you sit around the table, you're not sitting there as a female or a male, right? You're sitting there as colleagues, right? With all having the same common goal as around how do we make BAT a better tomorrow, right? So I think for me, definitely is being around, being comfortable with who I am, being comfortable with what I bring to the table. And that is my focus, right? So it's around how do we as a collective work together to achieve what we need to achieve. So for me, I don't necessarily, yes, I'm cognizant of the fact, that I'm a female around the table, but it's not really that big a focus anymore that I now need to exert myself and need to make my voice heard. It's really just about, I'm there to deliver a certain task. This is my role. I'm the lead from an HR perspective. I need to guide the teams on that. And I focus on basically doing that. And I think what is really helped me get to that point was really around having other strong women leaders within BAT, right? And I think if I look at our leadership right now and some of the leaders that we have that are females within the organization, and you basically I have a mentor, right? That's female, that basically also in a senior position within BAT, and that is what I've learned also from her, right? It's around how do you navigate, how did she navigate through the ranks to get to where she's been, and I think that is very, very important. And something that I always encourage people to do is also make sure once you get into the organization that you get yourself a coach, that you get yourself a mentor, right? Because those are some of the people that for me that really helped me get over this whole notion of, I'm a female and these are a lot of males or whatever the case might be, but very much focused purely on, I'm there to deliver a certain task, and that should be my focus. Autism?
Yeah, thanks for that. Neo, do you have any thoughts on this?
I mean, I always say representation matters. Not only from a gender perspective, from a diversity perspective. I think as part of my personal brand, people will know that I'm very much about that, across also different thinking, especially within marketing and branding, because that's how we build brands through different conversations and different perspectives. I think just to kind of build on what Wendy said, the one thing that I would add is that I think as much as also we're supported around strong women, I think strong men also as well. I've been fortunate enough within the business specifically to have a lot of male mentors and line managers, engage in these conversations, right? So to kind of debunk, the unconscious bias of, women sitting around the table. I think that's as important to have, yes, as females, we're the powerhouses, as we know we are, but is to have the men also recognize that and be part of that conversation. That's very important. I think the one thing that I still struggle with, and I always get surprised because I'm on this journey, and then when I look at kind of like my role models, especially female role models, is this thing about self-belief, we always talk about the imposter syndrome, and how sometimes you go into these boardrooms and sometimes, yes, it's a little bit biased towards men, or someone who's got maybe 30 years experience within the business, and I'm coming in as this girl who's like, yeah, but I want to do this to the brand, right? The self-doubt that always comes in, that imposter syndrome, it's like how you start unlearning that. What I've discovered through conversations that it still happens even with the most experienced senior leaders, but it's how you kind of cope with it and how you overcome it, and how you don't let that kind of make you stagnant in terms of what you're trying to achieve. But I mean, equality for all, representation matters, but I think being transparent across the board, not only with your female colleagues, but men also as well, because they need to come to the party. But I think there are, sometimes it's uncomfortable, but they must have uncomfortable conversations, right? Because it's a certain lens that they might look at situations in, and that we kind of need to kind of debunk also as well as we navigate.
Yeah, Arturo, I resent the fact that you said it doesn't apply to me, this question. Companies with gender balance at an executive level perform better than companies that don't, full stop. So it starts with, like Neo is saying, with the leadership, with also the men in the organization to lead the way and to drive that change that we need. If you want business to perform better, if you want to have better ideas, we need to have an inclusive culture with a balanced society as well as the leadership. That's all I'll say. 30 seconds.
Fantastic. So guys, thank you so much, Livash, Neo, Wendilene. Thank you so much for your insights. I mean, we've got a lot of questions still coming through, but we'll try and answer them as well through Laura and the team. But once again, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. I think the insights were really amazing. So once again, thank you so much. I think there's just two questions that I'd like to address that was kind of coming through on the chat. So for the students that had asked about the grad program and the entry dates as well as BOM, please keep an eye out on our LinkedIn page. So it's BAT East and Southern Africa LinkedIn page. We'll post all the details around submissions and how you can be a part of those programs. And then I think the second question was specifically around the grad programs in terms of, certain qualifications that you need. No, there is not. I mean, for example, I don't know if you heard Laura say, Livash is our head of manufacturing, but he's an aeronautical engineer by qualification. Wendilene is our HR business partner. She's got a tax qualification. So, in BAT, your qualification, not saying that it doesn't matter, but like Wendilene mentioned earlier, the world is your oyster. So it's really about what you make out of it and the opportunity that you have. So with that being said, in short, there's no specific qualification that we're looking for. So apply for something that you think you want to be a part of and add value in. And we'll take it from there. So fantastic. Thank you so much. I'll hand back over to you, Laura. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
What an amazing panel. Thank you so much. And honestly, I've hosted many of these and never seen an hour fly by so quickly. Really, really impressed. A couple of key takeaways that I picked up from Neo, the fact that guys out there, please remember that influence comes in many forms. I see a lot of questions of social media here, but Neo really referred to the fact that there's many, many ways you can have influence. Livash, become comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think we've all have potentially heard that before, but really, what does that mean? Take it upon yourself and push your boundaries. And Wendy, widen your profile, find opportunities to build your skills and demonstrate your passion. In fact, passion was referred to by all of you. Incredible. Thank you so much. You really, I learned a lot. So we're honored to have you here today. Thank you for your time and thank you for giving back to the students. As you saw, the chat is insane, which is always a demonstration of a good webinar. We will get the chat through to you straight away after. I know you've said that you'll reply to everybody as much as you can offline later, so thank you for that. So all I want to say to the GradStars out there now is, please, the GradStar Awards are still open. Don't miss your opportunity to be a 2021 GradStar. Download the GradStar app from your App Store and enter the awards network. It's an amazing platform to build your personal brand. We look forward to seeing you at our next event. We do have a leadership conversations where we're interviewing Jeanette Murray tomorrow morning. So just have a look for that on our social media. And Careers Week next week. We're putting together a whole week for you guys to help you. So have a look at careers-week.com and we'll see you all there. Thank you. We're honored. Thank you, BAT.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.